Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather, Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 16th day of December 2019. Up first here, we've got a winter storm warning, or a heavy snow warning, here for the southeast coast, or over toward, actually for Misty Fjords and Hyder, and that's in effect tonight until noontime, Tuesday, tomorrow, for anywhere from 10 to 15 inches of snow that could fall in that area, Misty Fjords in the Hyder area, by noontime tomorrow, and expected to be kind of the heavy wet snow. So I guess it would make snow blowers wouldn't work as good as if it was powder. Anyway, up to the north, we've got winter weather advisory out tonight and through Tuesday night there, or actually for Tuesday until early Wednesday for the Beaufort Sea coast here, central Beaufort Sea coast, for winds 40 to 50 miles an hour and blowing snow. The blowing snow expected to occur here on the central eastern Beaufort Sea coast there, and because they got the winds also over Kaktovik, Barter Island, some areas there, today even gusting 30 to 40 miles an hour there. But the blowing snow, which could reduce visibility to a half mile at times, expected on the central coast. Now the Yukon Flats, Koyukuk Valley, Bettles area, Chakyitsik, those locations, that's a wind chill advisory, which goes into effect for tomorrow night into Wednesday, until noon Wednesday, for these areas for wind chills as low as 50 degrees below zero with gusty northeast winds and falling temperatures. Colder air is slipping on down from the Arctic into these areas. And already, like today, Delta Junction seeing winds gusting to 35 miles an hour out of the east, temperature 12 degrees above zero. And that's it for the warnings, watches, and advisories. Nothing going on out here for the Aleutians, southern Alaska, or the Bering Sea. And satellite imagery showing a weakening system here. Actually, the warm front down here and the cold front back right through there. Bulk of the moisture slipping into the Queen Charlottes and off to the east, but enough kind of catching the southern southeast coast today in the form of rain, and then some rain or snow. In the case of Juneau Haynes, seeing snow all afternoon, for much of the day today, anywhere from 1 to 3 inches or so, give or take, falling in those areas. With Juneau a little above freezing this afternoon, while Haynes was down just a little below freezing. So 3 inches probably would have fallen up the Klondike Highway and lesser amounts in the Juneau area. Otherwise, about a third of an inch of precipitation fell in Yakutat, and that's about it as far as notable precipitation amounts go around the state today. Kodiak picked up 1,500 as a band of showers rolled through there, and that's about it. Otherwise, very light amounts. And then this weakening front here, much weaker than it was yesterday, pushing into the eastern Aleutians today, brought about 10 to 2/10 of an inch of precipitation. Winds barely even reaching small craft advisory level there. You can kind of see it's tending to fall apart here, getting breaks in the cloud shield there as it progresses eastward. Main low center back out here to the west, and that pulling cold air down out of the Russian Far East into the Shimya area, where they're seeing snow this afternoon, snow showers. Otherwise, not too bad over the northern interior. Upper Yukon Valley here, the Yukon Flats showing as a whiter area, as well as back here across northwest Canada. That's due to the cold temperatures. Chakyitsik sitting at 29 degrees below zero at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And even below zero temperatures, I think Toledo was 11 below zero there. I think that's just northwest of McGrath, and Fairbanks a little below zero as well. Otherwise, rolling this through again, you can see this area cloudy, and it's kind of a trough right through here sliding northward. And on the chart today, trough right through there, really not much associated with it as far as precipitation goes. Whatever there is over off the coast and in Russia. And then we have this low pressure area, about 972 millibars. All the winds with this system are back to the west there. North winds 40 to maybe possibly gusts as high as 60 miles an hour across Amchitka Island out of the north and northeast. And along the front, or ahead of the front, with the front, rain into the Fox Islands, mixture of rain or snow central Aleutians, and snow farther to the west. Very weak trough here, bringing us some scattered precip there. And then this front quite weak in through here. The occluded front very weak, and again, light precipitation, only 1/100 of an inch at Seward. Kodiak, as I mentioned, picked up 1/1500ths of an inch. The heaviest rainfall here with the more impressive cloud shield with the warm and cold front, but that's slipping on by across the Queen Charlotte Islands. And for tonight, that low will lift northward a little bit there, and that's going to bring the heavy snow into the Hyder and Misty Fords area. Otherwise, there's periods of rain over the southern areas, or mixed rain and snow with any elevation at all along the coasting in the form of rain. And lighter amounts up to the north, but it won't end completely. Could get a little more showery. No change here with the North Gulf Coast. And some flurries possible along the north side of the eastern Alaska Range, Northway Toke. I don't think they'll be in the delta there. You see the gradient tightening up here over the northeast interior, as well as a little bit there on the Arctic coast, or at least maintaining that. Trough keeps it showery over Kodiak Island. And for tomorrow, windy up here, Yukon Flats into the Koyukuk Valley. That's where the wind chill advisory is. With the colder temperatures and the gusty winds, also the winter weather advisory with snow and blowing snow on the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And again, gusts 40 to 50 miles an hour up there. Less wind, but dry, mostly clear here over much of interior Alaska, and may pick up a few flurries, but that's going to be south of St. Lawrence Island. You should be in the VFR zone there, as well as a good portion, all of the southwest coast into northern Bristol Bay. Some snow showers possible for the Pribilofs. This low tracking eastward just southwest of Sitkinak. Later in the day, or maybe evening, kind of hard to tell when the precip will spread up to Kodiak State Airport with this. Probably by afternoon it'll hit the southwest coast there and then begin to taper off here for the Alaska Peninsula. Colder air shifting eastward, coming southward. So we'll see for Wednesday, snowfall levels fall down to sea level here for the eastern central Aleutian areas, but not a whole lot of moisture left there, and then it dries out. You can see quite windy conditions here over the eastern interior. Arctic air coming, really taking over the interior areas, especially north and west of the Alaska Range. They're staying a little milder here, or by comparison, quite a bit milder for south central Alaska. Panhandle still kind of damp with snow in the north, rain and snow in the south. And for lows tonight down that way, looking at upper 20s to mid 30s there. Otherwise, 25 to 30 below, not much colder than what you're showing now, though some areas getting in the lower minus 30s up there over the Yukon Flats. Near zero either side, the Arctic coast, 20s, southern Alaska, mid 30s, Kodiak Island, upper 30s, Alaska Peninsula. Highs for tomorrow below zero, again from the Alaska Range on up to near the Arctic coast. Highs in the 30s to lower 40s southeast coast, lower 40s Alaska Peninsula. Lows the following morning, teens and 20s south central Alaska, 25 or 20 to 35.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Tuesday morning, looking something like this. Marginal VFR, Bering Sea and Aleutians with the IFR here from about Adak up, kind of curving up with the frontal boundary there, and then back across the eastern Aleutians to the western Alaska Peninsula. And then other zone IFR here from Fognak Island, northern Kodiak Island, around the Chiniak Marmot Bay area, off into the Gulf. Pretty good over the interior, some low stuff creating lower flying conditions here in the 40-mile country, and especially up over the Yukon Flats. And some IFR, Central Arctic Coast, Panhandle, marginal VFR in the north, IFR in the south. And for the afternoon on Tuesday, looking IFR in the north with all down the eastern border there. I don't think it'll be that quite far to the north. It could be, it'll be actually a surge lifting up in the afternoon that could possibly get all the way up to the passes. Otherwise, marginal VFR, North Gulf Coast, Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet VFR, as is just about all of interior Alaska, with the exception being from about the Yukon River there, southward to the eastern Brooks Range on the north slopes. But northern Bering Sea looking really good, a little bit of low stuff in the Bering Strait, possibly the Chukchi Sea, and then looking at some IFR there along or very near to the coast. And out west, some VFR breaking out over the western Aleutians, IFR, Adak, Atka, into Unmak and possibly Unalaska Islands. And for the morning on Wednesday, just marginal VFR possible, areas of the Arctic coast, especially central and east side, and still this low condition here, creating some possible marginal VFR, Yukon Flats, 40-mile country. Otherwise, the interior looking really good. Some marginal VFR possible along the Yukon Delta coast, but VFR down to the south. And lost area IFR out here from about Atka Island up into the south central Bering Sea, and a frontal boundary here brings some IFR into Kodiak Island, across the Gulf, and then cutting down across the southern panhandle. And for the afternoon, that pretty much stays stationary there with now some marginal VFR on the north side of the Alaska Range and northwest into the at least central Kuskokwim Valley northward. And then that's surrounded by VFR with marginal VFR along the southwest coast, eastern Bering Sea here to the Pribilofs, Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, and kind of extending through the Bering Strait there, marginal VFR, Arctic coast, VFR for the North Slope, and another batch of lower conditions coming in, trying to push into the western Aleutians with the next system. Passes, chalk up another VFR flying day for Anatuvik and Adigan, and Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, turning toward VFR throughout the entire day, and rainy will be VFR all day long with windy, same forecast, good VFR. Isabel, VFR. Mentasta starting out kind of marginal and then becoming VFR at some point in the day tomorrow, definitely by afternoon. And Tanita, VFR. Portage, marginal VFR, continuing same sort of pattern here with probably less of a chance of the IFR stuff on the eastern entrance, but I'd expect it regardless. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR to start and becoming marginal, and as I mentioned earlier, possibly becoming IFR in the southern approaches by late afternoon. And for the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here. We're in the Gulf of Alaska, now across the southern panhandle as the higher freezing levels kind of retreat back to the southeast from what they are today. And at the surface here, North Gulf Coast, Bristol Bay Coast, Nunivak Island, but still sitting up north between St. Matthew and St. Lawrence Island, and then diving back down with the colder air sweeping into the far western Aleutians. And for icing, areas of light to very isolated moderate rime or mixed icing. Here are the central eastern Aleutians, just catching the western Alaska Peninsula, Sand Point, and then another band, narrow band of just a threat of some possible light rime icing for Kodiak. And into the panhandle, looks like, again, light to very isolated moderate rime or mixed icing. And for the jet stream, ridging here kind of developing over the northern Bering on up into the Arctic where it's been, and that allowing now the flow kind of changing coming up for tomorrow. Northerly flow, only 30-40 knots though, but that's kind of a change, and this cold pattern will be shifting to the southwest. Otherwise, we've got a low there south of the Alaska Peninsula, and 9,000 feet looking like this, and 3,000 about the same. Turbulence, moderate chop, eastern interior, eastern Arctic coast, and also along the Aleutians, with light to isolated moderate chop for the southern Alaska area.
It can be many miles long, from 1 to 100 feet high, traveling at 400 miles per hour. This ocean monster is known as a tsunami, and it can wreak havoc on coastal populations and landscapes. A tsunami is a series of ocean waves caused by any large and sudden disturbance of the sea surface. Tsunamis can be generated by landslides, volcanic eruptions, or even meteorite impacts in the ocean, but they are most often caused by an earthquake where there's a sudden displacement of the ocean floor. When that happens, there's a transfer of energy from the sea floor to the ocean, causing waves on the surface to radiate outward in all directions. In deep waters, these waves may not even be detectable. But when the tsunami enters shallower waters, the wave speed slows and its height increases. The water along the coast may recede noticeably. A large wall of turbulent water, called a bore, may also form. When the tsunami hits, it may come ashore like a fast-rising flood and strike with devastating force. The series of waves may continue for hours. The first one may not be the last or the largest. For your safety, know the potential warning signs of an incoming tsunami. A strong earthquake that causes difficulty standing. A rapid rise or fall of the water along the coast. A loud ocean roar. When you're in a coastal area, it's important to keep alert for messages from local officials, such as lifeguards, police, the U.S. Tsunami Warning Centers, and NOAA All Hazards Radio. If you find yourself in a location of a tsunami strike, here's what you need to do to stay safe. Keep calm. Walk or run to higher ground, 100 feet above sea level or 1 mile inland. Do not drive. Keep roads open for emergency vehicles. If you cannot move to higher ground, use the stairs to get to the 3rd floor or higher in a sturdy building. Follow all instructions from local officials and stay out of coastal areas until authorities issue an all clear. Tsunamis can strike any coastline in the world and can affect locations thousands of miles away from where they formed. They may be uncommon, but the devastation they cause makes them a deadly force in nature. For more information on tsunamis, go to the following sites.
Tsunami, a killer wave, speeding across the ocean at 400 miles an hour. It smashes into land, destroying everything in its path. Tsunamis do not have a season, but they can strike any coast at any time. If one forms close to the shore, the shaking of the earth and a loud roar may warn of its approach. But when a tsunami forms across the ocean, it can take hours to reach the shore, enough time to warn people to move to higher land. Over the past 20 years, NOAA has developed DART, a real-time monitoring system that provides data for forecasting tsunamis. The DART systems have been deployed in earthquake-prone areas throughout the ocean, including the Pacific and Indian basins. A DART system combines a surface buoy and a sensor on the ocean floor. This sensor detects changes in water pressure and seismic activity and transmits the data back to the surface. If these changes indicate a tsunami may form, the buoy signals an alert via satellite to the tsunami warning centers in Alaska and Hawaii. Back at the centers, scientists plug the data into pre-existing models. These models predict the height, the arrival time, and the coastal locations that the tsunami will hit. Watches and warnings are issued to the affected communities so preparations can begin. Today, 47 DART stations are positioned all around the world, ready to detect and warn coastal communities about the next potential tsunami. With the DART system and tsunami warning centers in place, we are now better prepared to predict a killer wave before it strikes.
December 26, 2004. What began as an undersea earthquake in the Indian Ocean ended as the most deadly tsunami in recorded history, with nearly 240,000 lives lost. This was a devastating wake-up call to coastal communities and tsunami research. Prior to this event, only 6 of NOAA's Deep Ocean Assessment and Reporting of Tsunami, or DART, buoys were in place. Scientists could only predict tsunami arrival times, not flood potential. And there was not a global tsunami warning system. Today, 10 years later, we can tell a different story. U.S. and international coastlines are far better prepared for such a catastrophe, thanks in large part to research and technology developed at the NOAA Center for Tsunami Research at Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory. NOAA's DART array is now complete, with 39 buoys operated by the National Weather Service's National Data Buoy Center, Along with 21 international buoys, this array can measure a tsunami wave as small as 1 centimeter in the open ocean and provide these data in real time to forecast when a tsunami may hit the coast and how much flooding there will be. NOAA scientists and engineers are currently testing the 4th-generation DART buoy that will be able to measure local tsunamis as well as distant ones. Flooding forecast models incorporate local topography and historical tsunami data in order to more accurately predict exactly how a tsunami might behave when it reaches shore. NOAA has 75 site-specific models that can provide high-resolution flooding forecasts for effective response and mitigation during a tsunami event. NOAA has gathered data from every tsunami since 2004 to improve its forecast models. Today, it operates the world's only real-time tsunami flooding forecast system using DART data to accurately compute flooding forecasts. The NOAA Tsunami Warning Centers make tsunami data available on the internet and issue advisories, watches, and warnings through the Emergency Alert System and via NOAA weather radios. While it is impossible to prevent a tsunami, we are now much better prepared to detect them and predict their paths and impacts, so those in coastal communities can take the steps necessary to safely protect themselves.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the segment looking at today's sea ice analysis. Continuing to move westward here, the general flow of the ice with those east winds, and maybe Paulina opening up there near Barrow, just west of them, and Point Bear, and this area continuing to fill in, but still have an open area there. And as far as the Bering Strait and the southwest coast here, Norton Sound, looks like with the cold air coming in, ice will continue to expand and grow west-southwestward over the next 4 or 5 days. Coastal water forecast, south winds 20 knots there on the south coast of the Panhandle. North coast, south 15 and back up to 25 knots there up toward Yakutat. North 15, Lynn Canal, and southeast 15, Stevens Passage. Clarence Strait, south at 15 with 7-foot seas. And for Wednesday, pick the winds up here, south to southeast 30 knots on the south coast, seas 14 feet. We've got gales on the north coast, east-southeast 35 knots, seas 14 feet. And gale force northeast winds here for Stevens Passage, sustained 20 knots and 4-foot seas, southeast 20 for Clarence Strait, and still north at 15 for Lynn Canal. Prince William Sound tomorrow, east winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Small craft advisories North Gulf Coast, 10-foot seas and 25-knot winds, east at 30 for the Barren Islands. Gale warnings out for Kamishak Bay, northeast 35. Pretty windy south of the Foreland, southern Cook Inlet. 30 knots out of the northeast, sustained 8-foot seas and 20-knot winds for northern Cook Inlet. And then those increased to 25 knots out of the north on Wednesday, with seas at about 6 feet, and north 30 knots, southern Cook Inlet. Keep the gale warnings in Kamishak Bay for those northeast winds at 35. Northeast 25 for the Barrens, and east-northeast 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, northeast 20, seas 4 feet. And for Kodiak tomorrow, east winds 25 to 30 knots, strongest on the Pacific side of the island. Northeast 30, Sitkinak to Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, east 25, 12-foot seas. And the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, northeast 25 tomorrow, 7-foot seas, northeast 25. Good for small craft advisories in Bristol Bay as well. And then for Wednesday, north winds 25 knots from Bristol Bay all the way down to Cape Sarachev, and Pacific side of the peninsula, northwest 25, 18-foot seas, and up towards Kodiak Island in that zone, you've got north 25, northeast 30 for Shelikof Strait, northeast 20 on the east side of Kodiak, but 15-foot seas. And for the Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, northeast on the north side to northwest on the south side at 25 knots. Sumac Island, north to northwest, 25 to 30 knots. And then northwest 30 to 40 knots for Adak and Atka with the strongest winds on the south side. And 40-knot winds from the northwest, full gales are extend just about to Kiska Island and then come down to 30 knots to Shimei and Attu. West-southwest 30 knots, western Aleutians on Wednesday. Gale force northwest winds there at 35 knots for Adak and Atka. Small craft advisories for the Fox Islands, northwest 25 to 30 knots. Southwest coast coming out of Kuskokwim Bay, northeast or the Kuskokwim Delta coast, 25 knot winds there. Northeast 20 for the Pribilofs. 15 to 20 knot northeasterlies here for the remainder of the zones up to the north. And for Wednesday, Norton Sound, northeast 20, north 20 here, St. Lawrence Island, all along the southwest coast, but small craft advisories here south of Nunivak Island. And the Pribilofs for northwest winds there, 25 knots. Beaufort Sea coastline, gale warnings tomorrow on the eastern, central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. East 35 knots, brisk wind advisories here for the central and west side. East winds 30 knots there. And from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, northeast 20, Cape Thompson to Wales, northeast 15. Outlook for Wednesday, Wales to Cape Thompson, northeast 15, and then 30 knot northeast winds there from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, and east at 25 on the western Arctic coast, so brisk wind advisories there. Down to 20 knots on the central coast, brisk wind advisories, east 25 knots there for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight, windy up there as well with increasing winds. Winter weather advisory coming into the picture there due to blowing snow that's expected on the central Beaufort Sea coast. Look for winds anywhere from 35 to maybe gusts as high as 50 miles an hour. Increasing winds here over the eastern interior as well, and maybe dropping off a little around Delta Junction. Stays damp here along the southeast coast and the North Gulf Coast. And this system keeps light rain in over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And for Tuesday, fair over the interior. We've got a wind chill warning out for the upper Yukon Valley, Koryakuk Valley, and winter weather advisory eastern Arctic coast. And the snow should taper off around the Hyder area.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.